Have you ever listened to a really interesting conversation and thought, I want to share my opinion on this? Maybe you heard a hot topic dialogue on a podcast or radio show that sparked a conversation between you and your spouse, family members, or friends. That conversation helped you understand your own life and relationships better and made you feel connected and important because someone listened and your opinions matter. That's why Toby and Shelley are bringing you Headlines. Join us for authentic conversations to explore ideas, opinions, experiences, and real-life stories. Live on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Come chat about life with your friends. Hello, welcome. It's time for Headlines. Dun, dun, dun.
I don't have
Shelley Cardi.
I don't have a bumper. Did I not make a banner scroll for headlines?
Well, I don't know. Did
Thought
you?
I did. I guess not. But the
Are you
information.
sure? Scrolly.
Yeah.
Oh, no, last time you just used messages and methods.
All right, I'll do that again now.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's what you did.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted your intro.
I'm Shelley Carney. Today, we're talking about things in the news, headlines, and wishing you, like Happy Easter! Yay!
Have you got your baskets of candy all prepared for the kids?
What kids?
Oh yeah.
I had some macarons today.
Oh, you
Macarons.
did? Oh, from last night?
Yeah,
Yeah, macarons. That's the French call them.
that's right.
Macarons.
They
Uh,
like macarons so much they elected it president.
Yeah.
This just in.
This just in, we elected a cookie to be president. He's actually got a tough. He's
Probably his
actually got
nickname.
he's supposedly, I don't know, this is what they're saying, has a tough race against Marine Le Pen, who happens to be kind of a, conservative but almost nationalist to the far right. So she ran against him, and she lost by a significant amount last election 5 years ago. Their elections are every 5 years, but she seems to be closer this time. So, what do you want to talk about first, or what do you want to talk? What do you want to tell the folks? I want to do a giveaway tonight.
Okay. Well,
So
we
here's
probably could say hello to Bobby Brass
okay.
and long way to Tipperary.
Long way.
And Bobby wants to know if we're going to be talking about the chase at all tonight.
We are going to be talking a little bit about the chase. I want to talk about the pictures a little bit more. I will tell you that very little of what I have to say about the chase is hypothetical. I'm not going to talk about theories. I'm going to talk about what I see, what I've heard, what I believe based on my knowledge of Fenn, that kind of thing. So it's not we are going to talk about it. Chasing Indies in the room. Cherry crunch cake. Wow.
Macaroons and macarons are a little bit different. Yes,
Oh,
they
are they?
are.
Are
Well,
they?
macaroons is like the coconut, like Samoa's, the coconut chocolate.
Oh,
Yeah,
what did
coconut
we eat yesterday?
macaroons.
What did we have in the picture? Yesterday?
Macarons,
Macarons.
which
Oh,
is the French.
well,
It's
that's
got
not how.
it's crunchy and fluffy because it's got all the egg white in it and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that is not. I should bring that picture up so people can see what we're talking about. Hang on.
Cherry crunch cake tonight
Yummies.
with a
Yummies.
twist.
Oh,
Happy
wait.
to be here. I myself am happy to be here. Oh, 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 oh.
Oh, you are so funny when you're in your own house all by yourself.
I crack myself up.
Yeah, you crack yourself up. Actually, you are not in your house by yourself. Where is that photograph? Oh, I didn't upload it.
Instagram.
I can go to Instagram.
Facebook.
Yeah. Insty. Keep talking. Tell me what I'm going to talk about.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Well, you wanted to talk about Ukraine.
Yeah.
Miss the Church of the Chase. I think it was Search of the Search, but because that rhymes. But the CH's, you got your alliteration. Okay, yeah. Larry says, hello, Toby. Hello, Shelley. Hey there, Bobby. Hi, Andy. Hello, long way.
To the Tipperary. Okay, here I've got it on Insta.
Now, what do we got?
So I do have to share something else.
Recipe for cherry crisp cake, cherry crunch cake.
Ace pineapple cider.
Pineapple. I've never heard of pineapple cider.
Mexican porta
That
pan.
sounds really tasty.
Coconuts. Yeah, yummies. Yummies with the inevitable tummies.
Nummy num. Nice Easter treats.
Mm. So here's what I was going to tell you. I want to give away a book tonight. I want to give away a copy of our livecast live.
Don't give mine away.
Yours is set over on my counter, so I want to take it over.
Okay.
I'll take it over. Yours is separate, and we have several copies. So I want to give a book away tonight. I like the way I cover my face with it all the time. Our livecast live book, which is all about live streaming, podcasting, blogging, publishing books on Amazon, everything that we do, everything that we're good at. Just published, available on Amazon. But we'll give away a signed copy tonight. And here's what I want you to do, Shell.
What's that?
I want you to come up with a bit of Toby and Shelley trivia. So that you can ask them so they can answer by texting to the 505-750-2744 number. Okay.
Got it.
So we'll get people, and I won't give it away until we get 20 people in the room. How's that? Is that
okay?
Fair?
Yeah.
All right. Let me show them. So here's why we're taking macaroons. We were together yesterday, and we kind of finished the day by we wanted to do an Easter photo for my Instagram account, because my Instagram account is very different from almost everything else I do. And we were at Albertsons. Shelley and I had kind of a what's between lunch and dinner. Linner.
Hello, Karen.
Hi, Karen Werner. How are you doing? How are things in New York? Oops.
Brunch. Lunch and dinner or lunch and breakfast?
No, what we did yesterday was a late afternoon lunch, right?
Oh, early. We're like, it was old people dinner.
Yeah.
It was happy hour dinner, in fact, because we got there just after 4, which happy hour just started.
Right. Anyway, so we started talking about doing an Easter shot for my Instagram channel, which has all my still lives. And so we started talking over the table, came up with a set of ideas. There's an Albertsons, which has a bakery, and we thought we'd stop for the macaroons. So what I'm going to show you here is the finished shot. So this is my Instagram account. You can see it's got mostly still lives and things like that. Here's the shot that we uploaded.
Why do you have a picture of a car?
I'm gonna explain that in just a moment.
Oh, okay.
So this is the picture that we uploaded on
macarons.
Easter Sunday, and that's how the macarons played into it. So I think we bought 6 or 8. How many macarons did we buy? 5, 10?
8.
Okay.
I ate them.
They were into the shot. You ate them. You didn't eat them all. Sparky Spark.
Right, most of them.
Yeah. So this is a shot we did. The other stuff, the backgrounds are from replica surfaces, the background of the wall and the floor, as I call them. And then the other stuff we picked up at a thrift store that we have around here called Savers. Did I get that?
Yes.
Right? Yeah,
that's
Savers.
right. You finally got it right.
Yay. And
20 people in the room. Look at that.
What? I just got a nasty gram from somebody. What?
You got a nasty gram.
Yeah, I just got it. I think it was email. Hold on just a second. Let me see what it was.
Oh, no. What happened?
Let's see what Waveseeker has to say.
So we got people in the room saying hello and talking about macarons. So as you can see, we took this photo yesterday. We went to the thrift store. Toby found a pretty dolly he wanted to have.
In the picture.
So he picked out the pretty dolly that's got the little bunny rabbit attached to her. And she has a little key in the other hand for some reason. I picked out the hanging basket with the lights, the candle lights in it. And he picked out the Easter basket and eggs. And then we went to Albertsons and got the macarons and the raspberry bush, piece of raspberry bush there.
And that was our Easter celebration. But today I was over at Home Depot, and parked nearby me was this 1963 Studebaker Avanti in pristine condition.
Interesting.
And as I was taking a picture, the gentleman who owned it, who was my age group, walked up and he said, "That's going to cost you $1." And I said, "You know what? I will be happy to pay it for that photo because my second car in life was a 1953 Studebaker."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
just a beautiful car. I didn't realize this, and he informed me of this, that the body I thought was steel, like all the other Studebaker vehicles were. This was not. The Avanti was fiberglass, and it was made in the same factory that the Corvette was made, because it too is fiberglass body. Beautiful car, just stunning. Beautiful light in Albuquerque. So yeah, if you want to join me on my Instagram account to see all the still life pictures that I take, you're welcome to join me. I'm at TM Eunice on Instagram. I have 494 followers, not a lot. But so that's why we're talking about Macrons. So Wave Seeker, I'm trying to see where the message is. I saw it pop up on my phone, and I just want to make sure that what I saw was correct, because I was angry.
John Werner says, P.S. I'm still Toby fan 3000.
Yay, John. Thank you. You are my favorite Toby fan 3000. Let's see. Where did it go? Where would it have gone? It was an email.
I don't know. Why don't you get started? Maybe it'll show up later.
All right, let's get started. Sorry. All right, let's talk about, so we are going to talk, shall we do fin pictures? Let's wait till we get to 20. When we get to 20, we'll talk fin pictures.
Okay. And, we were at 20 and then it dropped off again.
Oh, shucks.
We'll wait for it to do it again.
Okay. Well, when we get back up. All right, so let's take a look at the war in Ukraine first. And in this last week, this was not a good week for Russia. So what Russia's original plan was, I used the word blitzkrieg last week. I don't think it was a blitzkrieg. I think it was more like their mid-1950s invasion of Hungary and Czechoslovakia, and to some extent Poland, where they just brought in a bunch of troops, brought in several battalions of tanks, and then just headed for the capital of the nation and kind of took over the capital. And it was relatively bloodless, right? It was just, they were going to take them over, and those guys weren't going to, fight them, nor could they. Russian was the strongest Eastern power at that point. And they just took over the countries, and they made them part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Now, eventually, they broke away, and then after they broke away, they broke up. They became other countries. Czechoslovakia, I think, now is three different countries. So that was the original plan. They were going to cross this territory right here, all the way to Kyiv, and then install the Russian puppet. Which, by the way, I should have put that up there as well. Which, by the way, the Ukrainians captured. So they captured the guy that the Russians were going to put in place of the current president. And they talked about the things that he owned. He had 32 houses, 28 apartments, 22 cars, 3 yachts, and 2 airplanes. The guy was, he was oil rich, and that's why he loved Russia so much. So that was their plan. They were going to charge through, put their own power in Kyiv, and then just run the country, claiming that they were really Russian and Ukraine wasn't anything. Ukraine was a made-up country. Well, that didn't go well for them. They were pushed back they never made it to Kyiv. They were pushed back from Kharkiv. They ended up in this area that they kind of own. See this red area? That's the area that they fought to a standstill in 2014 and 2015. So they're all back there now. The places where there's major fighting is Mariupol, which is pretty much flattened. I don't know what it is in their territory, but it's not going to be much any good. There was a lot of fighting this last week in Kherson, and there was some fighting in Luhansk. But it was said that the Russians had retreated that area in order to reconstitute its armies, bring them back together, in addition to adding some other armies that came over from Russia. There was at some point images of a 40-kilometer long convoy of trucks and tanks and things like that moving into this eastern area with the expectation that eventually they would try another push. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think what they're going to do at this point, so strategically speaking, Russia has lost this war from a strategic purpose. They are not going to take over Ukraine. They had a sense that it would be easy, that the Ukrainians who spoke Russian would welcome them, and that they could take it over by installing it. None of that happened. So their strategic objectives are not met. Now what they can do is kind of hold on until whatever they determine the end of the war is, and they'll look for some kind of settlement. And part of that settlement will probably be them wanting these eastern and southern parts of Ukraine that they've pretty much owned since 2014 and 2015. So Vladimir Zelensky, who is the current president of Ukraine, has basically said we will fight to the death. Now, that doesn't mean that this is all going to end in a couple of weeks. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think Putin is going to play this waiting game where he keeps making threats and where he keeps pushing the Ukrainians, and hopefully eventually has enough power in the east and south, the southeast and eastern portion of Ukraine to at least stay there. I think that's as much as he's going to get right now, if he gets that at all. The bad news is that the longer he spends waiting out to take some kind of new action, the more the Western Europe and the United States have the ability to provide Ukraine with additional armaments. And we started providing this week $800 billion worth of armaments that the Congress approved, and President Biden has started sending, including Javelin anti-tank missiles, Switchblade anti-tank drones, a lot of anti-tank weaponry, but most importantly, 155 millimeter howitzers, which are the biggest in our arsenal. They're the howitzers that we would take to war, the cannons we would take to war if we went to war, and 40,000 rounds of ammunition for them. So that's a lot of ammunition. I mean, a lot of defensive weapons. Now, it's not enough for Ukraine to counter invade Russia, nor do I believe Ukraine wants to do that. They're mostly what I would refer to as defensive weapons. So there was 113 armored personnel carriers, and then there was 17 MI helicopters. Those aren't American helicopters. Those are actually Russian helicopters that we bought from the countries that had separated from Russia after 1989 and 1990. We actually bought that weaponry from them and kept it in stock, improved it, and now we're giving it back to the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians are actually trained on these helicopters before this, the Ukrainian pilots. So it hasn't been a good week, not only from a strategic perspective. I think their strategic objective will have changed from taking over Ukraine to maintaining their position in eastern and southeastern Ukraine. The other things that happened is they appointed a new general to head up the command for the area, and I forgot his name. I wrote it down someplace, but he's the same general that ran the war in Syria, and he's referred to as the brute of Aleppo, something like that, because he's the one basically that ordered the flattening of the town of Aleppo in Syria, where most of the rebels were, and that brought an end to the rebellion. Right? These were not; they were Syrians rebelling against the Syrian government, and Syria invited Russia in to solve the problem for them, and they did by using this Russian general. Did anybody see his name? So strategically, I don't think it's going to end in the next 2 weeks or month or 2 months. It's going to take longer, and I think and all that time gives Ukraine to strengthen itself in terms of defensive weapons, and I think that's going to cost the Russians, and eventually they're going to have to sue for peace of some kind, right? And the peace being, okay, you take that part, you take this part, and stay out of the rest of us. But Ukraine, what I can predict at this point comfortably is Ukraine will remain an independent nation. It's not going to ever become a part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, right? But in the meantime, Ukraine happens to be the breadbasket for Western Europe, and so there's shortages. There's the Western Europe is starting to experience shortages in their production, in their grocery production. So that's going to something's going to have to change there. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the Eastern countries get their grain from Ukraine. And that's always been kind of what Ukraine was all about. It's always been the breadbasket of that divide between Eastern Europe and Western Europe.
So his name, he was the butcher of Aleppo, and
Butcher of Aleppo.
his name is Alexander Dvornikov.
Right. So he's now taken over command. There was some talk of tactical nukes at the beginning of the week. People worried about that, but I just don't see that happening. Tactical or strategic. Otherwise, tactical rocket fired or cannon fired nukes. Or ICBMs, the strategic ICBMs. I think the strategic ICBMs are off the table for two reasons. Number one, with Putin's mentality, Putin's a narcissist and he's self-serving. So he doesn't want to die. And he knows that if nukes get into this game, he might kill a lot of people, but he's going to die. And he doesn't want to do that. He wants to enjoy his life, to spend all the money that he's got in banks all over the world. So every time I hear it, I get a call from my daughter and she asks me, what's the probability? I tell her the probability is not high. There's always a probability. This is what I say to her. There's always a probability. I don't think it's a high possibility. So, and I still don't. I don't think this is going to end up in some sort of unplanned nuclear disaster. The other thing that I thought was interesting, well, in terms of the war zone, they lost another general and they lost another, let me see, where was he? They lost the 8th general and the 34th colonel in Ukraine. And he was a major general and he ran a guards battalion, which is their infantry and which is like their top level infantry. So they're still losing senior officers. In addition to that, Putin, being angry at these guys, has decided to start returning general officers, flag officers is what they refer to them, back to Moscow to be demoted and put someplace where they're made harmless, which is crazy. Stalin did the same thing. Hitler had done the same thing. All the tyrannical leaders eventually do this, and it doesn't help the army at all. In addition to that, there has been reports. So Putin has layers around him. And the farthest out layer are the Russian people. Now, honestly, he doesn't give a damn about the Russian people. He doesn't care about them, but they don't know that. As a matter of fact, his popularity rating right now is in the 80s, right? Because he's feeding them propaganda and they think they're winning a war against the former Nazis, now the Ukrainians. So at the outer end, in that, there are just inside of that are the oligarchs, the people that have padded their bank accounts in the billions as a result of their friendship with Putin, with the expectation that Putin would make some sort of gift to them, whether it's oil or I think his favorite guy he actually made him an oligarch as a result of giving him money when he used to cater all his parties, literally. So that's one of his favorite oligarchs. And there was some expectation that if we made it difficult on the oligarchs, meaning if we took away their, yachts and froze their bank accounts and closed their homes in the various countries, that they would eventually push back to Putin and say, "Oh, we're looking like we're poor. Can you stop this thing? Because the West is hurting us." I didn't ever expect that was going to change things, because Putin, first of all, they have enough money that if they lose one or two yachts, they don't care. Right. That's one thing. The second thing is they don't push back much on Putin because Putin is the source of their income. Anytime Putin wants to shut off that thing, he can shut it off. And he doesn't trust them because he knows they're greedy people. And Putin, if anything, knows the value of greed, right? He counts on them being greedy so that he can keep them in lockstep with what he wants to do. Now, he may not be getting any support from them. Sooner or later, he's going to need some money to run the country because the sanctions are hurting him. And the fact that he missed his last bank payment, basically the We all the big countries borrow money, and we do it in the form of uh, trading in our case, our dollars for tickets from China, in our case, that say we'll pay you back sooner or later, right? Um, Russia does the same thing, and he missed his last set of payments, which lowered his Standard and Poor's rating. So nobody's going to lend him any more money, whether he's an oligarch or not. So that's the next circle. Inside that circle, there are a bunch of guys. So I don't know how much you know about Vladimir Putin. He was a KGB officer for over 22 years, right? That's where he grew up in. He grew up in the University of Moscow, went to the KGB, worked for the KGB, and only trusted the people in the KGB because they were the guys. As a matter of fact, the KGB, they're now known as the FSB, but at the time, the KGB was what kept the old Russia together while Russia was transitioning from this period where it was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics to the Russian Federation. The KGB still behaved like the KGB. And they played by what is referred to as Moscow rules. I mean, being there as an American was basically meant you were constantly followed. You couldn't trust talking on the phone. There were cameras, and microphones in your hotel room. And that's what they called the Moscow rules. Now, that didn't mean you were going to end up in Lubyanka, but they knew everything they wanted to know about you. So that's his real inner circle. The guys that advise him the most come from that circle. And what they've learned from dealing with Vladimir Putin is you got to tell him what he wants to hear. Otherwise, he gets really unhappy because he's narcissistic and he thinks he's the smartest guy in the world, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are the ones he trusts. But there has been reporting in the last week about the differences in the makeup of that circle of quote friends that he's got, unquote, that he's got around him. There have been a couple of them that have been tossed, including one that was sent to one of the prisons in Moscow. So they are probably trying to tell him, and when they tell him something he doesn't want to hear, he kicks them out of his inner circle. I also just read in The Guardian that he's formed another layer of protective guards because he's getting paranoid now. This is the point at which they start getting paranoid, and they start taking trusted professionals, and in this case, I'll call them military professionals, and they form another ring of these trusted military professionals in order to ensure they're not assassinated by somebody that they know. That's where he's at. And I don't know how much you know about German history, but that's what Hitler did. First there was the military, then there was the brown shirts, and then there was the Gestapo, and then there was the SS, and then there was the SS. Right? He just kept building layers of personal protection around him, and that's kind of what Putin is doing. And so he's going to have a lot to deal with if he actually survives this area, or I mean this period. I think there's going to be a time. I don't think he'll ever see a general revolt by the people. They're when you have 80% confidence in your leader, there's not going to be a general revolt, but there's going to be pressure. And that pressure is going to come from a lot of different angles. The military, who don't like losing this war. The oligarchs, who don't like losing their money. The inner circle, who don't like the fact that they're losing Russia as they know it, right? That not only are they not going to have a union of Soviet Socialist republics, but that the Russian Federation is going to be significantly weaker and more questioned about its capability after losing or suing for peace with Ukraine. So there's not a good outcome for Vladimir Putin. And that's where I think this is all heading. Some of the other bad news that they got this week is they had a missile cruiser in the Black Sea, and it had missiles. They're similar to our Tomahawk missiles. They're launched by a rocket, but then they use ramjet engines to fly with, and they're pretty accurate. They're as accurate as our Tomahawks. You can see the missile tubes right here, and it was in the Black Sea, so it was covering fire in a lot of these major cities. A lot of the damage that was done to Kherson and Mariupol came from these ship-launched missiles. Well, It turns out that Ukraine is a pretty good missile maker itself. It produces an anti-ship weapon that they call the Neptune, and it fired two of these Neptune rounds into this Moskva, which is Russian for Moscow. This missile cruiser, which was the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. Now it's not a big in comparison. Generally a flagship, the U.S., the Chinese and Russian in the Atlantic is usually a carrier, but this is the Black Sea, so it's a much smaller area. So it went down. It started on fire. They evacuated some of the crew. Apparently, the captain was killed in the initial attack. And then, as they were, according to the Russians, it did sink. But there's two different stories as to what sunk. The Ukrainian side says it just took on water after several explosions. The Russians claimed that they were towing it into port. Some bad weather came, and they had to release it to not sink the towing boat, the craft that was towing them, and it sunk. Nonetheless, the Black Sea is relatively deep enough so that when you sink a boat in the Black Sea, you're not going to be able to recover it. So that boat was gone. As a result, the rest of the fleet that was in the Black Sea moved 80 kilometers away, which puts them out of the accuracy range of these Neptune missiles. So they're out about 80 kilometers. That also means they can't fire any more missiles into the area and be perfectly accurate. So that was another bit of bad news. And what I didn't understand, see that round thing right there? That's a missile defense system. We have them on a lot of our attack ships, everything. Well, I know we have some on carriers, but we put them on all our ships, and it's called a phalanx. And basically, it is a 20 millimeter cannon, a Gatling gun cannon, and it fires, I don't know, 1,000 rounds a minute. And the idea is you just put up enough lead in the right direction that you're going to take that this is our anti-ship missile defense system. So that's what we put on all our ships, phalanx. We've done it for, I think we started seeing them in the mid 90s. They're very effective. They're radar driven. You don't even need a human to run them. The radar and the AI makes the decisions about what to target and what to fire. That Russian ship, I can see, has phalanx systems on there. And there's, as a matter of fact, a video that Russia was sharing showed the phalanx firing. That is their missile defense system. So I don't know what happened there. They didn't expect it, or it didn't work. Whatever. Their anti-missile defense system didn't work for them, and as a result, the boat was sunk. So I did mention they lost their 8th general, 34th colonel. So that's kind of an update on Russia. I am more pessimistic that this is going to be a short-lived war. I think it's going to be longer because I think Putin has to consider a solution that doesn't make him look so bad. I mean, at this point, he knows there's not going to be any invasion of Ukraine with a takeover, and then it becomes part of the Russian Federation. That's not going to happen. There's just no way, unless he would go nuclear, and I don't think he'll do that. I just don't feel like narcissists are that stupid. They always ensure somehow that after all this is over, they're still alive, The other thing that happened is the reason he was concerned, his excuse for being concerned about Ukraine, was that he was concerned that Ukraine would join NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which all the other Western Europeans belong to, which the United States belongs to, and that would put NATO right on his border. Well, Ukraine, in order to appease Putin, said they're not going to become a member of NATO, right? But go away, we're not going to do that. But in the meantime, you can't see them here, but they're on Russia's border up here. Well, not Sweden, but Finland, which is right on Russia's border. It's a long border with Russia. It has announced last week that it is going to consider becoming a member of NATO. So Putin, if part of his strategy was to make sure he didn't have any NATO nations on his border, he's going to lose that because Finland's going to do that. And so is Sweden. Now, Sweden doesn't have border with Russia, but it's right above Finland and enters into that area of the Norway, Denmark, all of those. So any way you look at it, this has not been a win for Vladimir Putin, especially this last week, because this last week was just totally bad news.
Well, in the chat room, we're finding out that OK Larry's wife is a natural born Ukrainian, and she's been recognized in the local news.
Wow.
She does still have family in Ukraine. And her thoughts are they're going to win. The Ukrainians are going to win. They're strong people. The sad thing is they are all the same people. They are cut from the same cloth in history. It's difficult to explain. But yeah, they at one point in time, they're neighbors, right? They're like, it's like when we had the Civil War, if the South would have been another country.
Right.
Well, we're all the same people.
It goes back to, as far as the Russian Revolution in the after World War One, when Ukraine, which at the time was basically the part of Russia that provided, it was their breadbasket, and they were absorbed into the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics without any consideration that they were actually a separate country. And they lived happily and peacefully in that long time. They speak different languages. Russian is slightly different from Ukraine. They can understand one another, but there were a lot of Russians because they shared a common border. There were a lot of Russians, especially in the areas like like Mariupol and all those areas that you see in eastern and southeastern Ukraine were effectively Russian, even before Russia's invasion in 2014 and 2015. Long way. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. I might even put up I don't think I have a slide for it, but I do want to talk about propaganda. Yeah, yeah. And that's why he has an 80+% approval rating inside Russia. Now there are people.
They're giving you a name here, Search Daddy.
Oh. Yeah. So yeah, it was a bad week for him, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. I think they are reconstituting their forces in eastern Ukraine, and last week I was thinking a great big open plains tank battle like the one that the Russians and the Nazis fought back in 1944 as the Germans were falling back into Germany, and the Russians were pursuing them. That was the first time they had the T-30. There's a couple of great films about the T-34 tank and what it did to the Germans in that last pitched tank battle. It's sometimes referred to as the greatest tank battle of all time. So,
well, we've got a question about how close are the New Mexico fires to where we are?
Well, they are spread all over the state. The closest one is in Placitas, which is
really,
yeah.
I didn't know it was that close.
Which is about 5 miles as the crow flies from my house. So, yeah, I think we're going to have a really bad fire season. We got, in terms of snowpack, we got nothing in terms of snowpack, and I don't know if any of you have seen. Well, you can see it in Lake Mead. Lake Mead is experiencing its lowest water since it became a dam, that kind of thing. But we have a couple of reservoirs. The reservoirs up north aren't low, and you guys probably remember these. El Vado, and what's the one above El Vado where the guy was digging for Finn's treasure? Remember that? Where he's digging that 15-foot hole looking for he finally got busted.
Oh, I don't remember.
Heron. So there are two big reservoirs up north on the Rio Chama that actually where Albuquerque gets its water from. And I read in the Albuquerque Journal that they're low, but not low enough so that we have to worry about it. I'm not so sure because we owe water to Texas. So Texas, we actually pay a water fee to Texas of some kind. The Rio Grande was low for a while. It's kind of normal. I went out there last weekend just to take some photos and just see what it was like. And it's up. It's muddy as usual. But There's a reservoir below us called Elephant Butte. And I was looking at some videos that people have been shooting there recently, and it's like low like Lake Mead. You can see like the boat, the docks are literally on the ground. That's how far out the water has gone from. So we have some funny things. Opinion on Putin messing with our infrastructure system. So he's going to try. I mean, he's the only threat he has. So let me talk a little bit about that generically. So you've heard me say before, if you've listened to me at all, you've heard me say before that we have four great enemy nations in the world. Now, I'm not talking about war-fighting nations, but these are the nations that would rather see the U.S. not exist than anyone, right? And they include Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. And each of them have a capacity for playing with our infrastructure because they have strong cyber tactical and strategic capabilities. And any of them, if they want, can use it as a threat, right? Because Russia, China, and Iran all believe, North Korea unfortunately doesn't believe this. They're just not wise enough. But Iran, China, and Russia all believe they cannot win a kinetic war, the exchange of bullets and rockets and ICBMs. They know that they can't win that kind of war against the United States, that we would simply overpower them. And it would, and maybe lose, because it doesn't do any good to fight a war if at the end of the war you're not only a loser, but the whole world has lost, right? You eventually just wipe yourself out. So they all believe that. So they all also believe, and they have people in the higher ranks of their respective militaries that believe the best way to beat America is by having America defeat itself. And I know that sounds like a funny thing.
And we've been working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
divide and conquer.
That's exactly it. So anytime any one of them does something that is cyber, it is far more difficult. No, it is far more useless for them to attack any of our infrastructures, right? Because they know that's temporary. And every time you do that, one of the things about cyber warfare is that when you do something, you can't do it without leaving a footprint. That's just the nature of it, right? And we have pretty good cyber people on our side too. Don't get me wrong, but the problem with that is anytime you do execute a cyber attack on so let's say infrastructure or the election, you leave a footprint. That's why the Department of Justice about once every 3 months announces all the Russians that are now indicted and will go to prison if they're ever caught, right? They're indicted by a grand jury, they're convicted by an American judge, and if they're ever caught, they go to jail. That's why they can't leave Russia anymore after that. So because of that footprint. So it's a lot easier to leverage the damage that we do ourselves, and that's what they're getting progressively better at. So there are, I'm going to say, 4 things that they focus upon in order to ensure that they never have to attack us either kinetically or in an infrastructure cyber attack. And he's talked about, if you're going to do this to me, I'm going to mess with your elections, right? He's not talking about getting in and changing votes. That's not what he's talking about. When he talks about our elections, he's going to do what he did last time. He's going to create. Well, let me talk about the 4 things. Where they're going to leverage what we're already doing to ourselves. They're going to make us more divisive. They're going to make us more sick. They're going to make us more stupid, and they're going to leverage all of these things, right? And they're going to make us more worried about our future. Okay. So, and they don't have to do cyber attacks. They don't have to do kinetic attacks to do that. I just read an article today about the state of Florida banning 14 different books, or was it? I'm sorry, It was half of 52 different, so 26 different books, because their impression was that it fomented critical race theory. Now, I would challenge 95% of the people that I know to define critical race theory, right? I don't think most people know what critical race theory is, but they're afraid of it. And the more we're afraid of it, that leverages the Russians' ability to make you even more afraid of it. So here's the state of Florida Department of Education bans 26. They have a selection of 52 books for mathematics. They banned 20, half of them, 26 of them, because they believed they talked about critical race theory. Now, let me point this out. These books were math books, mathematics books for grades 1 through 5. I challenge anybody I know in any state I know to pick up their child's math book and point to the areas that math book should be banned because it contains critical race theory in it. It's just ridiculous. But when Russia sees something like that, it picks up on it and it leverages it, and it makes people afraid of critical race theory, even though they don't know what it is. When Russia sees that we have people that don't want to get their vaccinations, it picks up on that and it leverages it, and it invests its cyber activities and putting Facebook posts up that talk about infrastructure. I was once there's a social audio network called I left it. What's
Clubhouse?
Clubhouse. And I was late one evening. I was once in a room, and it consisted of people, mostly Black, who were talking about not getting their vaccination because they believed that it was a way to inject a tracking mechanism into their bodies, and that ultimately it would be the vaccination that killed you, not the virus. And I was they finally saw me kind of in the clubhouse. You have your avatar, and they can see who it was. So they asked me to come up. Gave me an opportunity to speak, and I said, "I'm 73 years old. I've been vaccinated my entire life, including one specific day in the military, where in basic training we got 24 different vaccinations in one day by going down a line." Right? I get my flu vaccination every year. I'm old enough to have gotten pneumonia vaccinations. What's the one that I call scabies, but not
Shingles.
shingles? I've got that vaccinated. I get vaccination, at least once a year, just because I get my flu vaccination. And now I'm probably, like the rest of us, going to have to get the COVID vaccination on an annual basis. Anyway, I was just amazed that you could come to the conclusion that part of this was to inject you with some sort of tracking mechanism. And I mentioned to them, I said, I want you to look around and see how close you are to your cell phone.
Well, they were using it to be
Yeah.
on the app.
Yeah. Is there anyone in this room that's operating without a cell phone? You already carry a tracking mechanism with you. And believe you me, if anybody wanted to track you, they could get into your phone and track you. Thirdly, if I wanted to kill a group of people, I wouldn't go through all the trouble of killing them via a vaccine. That's a lot of effort to vaccinate a number of people to kill them. An easier way is to create a vaccine that is carried on the air and walk through a local airport.
You mean a virus?
I'm sorry, a virus. So, but countries like Russia and China and Iran, and to some extent North Korea, although they aren't as good. North Korea, I'll tell you where North Korea is really good at the cyber technology, is using it to acquire wealth, either from banks with real wealth or some of the crypto wealth that's available now. So they're really good at that, the North Koreans. And they communicate with each other. China has already said it's attempting to support Russia in this war against the Ukraine by providing it non-military supplies. So any chance any of these countries get to work against us without tossing kinetics at each other, they will do it. And the easiest way to do it in America right now is to create divisiveness over several areas: race, education, we will, as a result of what's happening now, become a dumber nation. And the vaccine to make us sicker. More people would die. We have another variant right now that's creating that's spreading faster than the others. Thankfully, it's not spreading as fast because 70% of us are vaccinated. So there aren't as many hospitalizations. Each of my daughters, East Coast daughters, has had COVID, but they were all vaccinated. So to them, it felt like a bad cold. And some of the kids too. Some of the kids got it, but they had all been vaccinated. So they don't have the opportunity like I do, never to leave my house and order my groceries from Walmart and everything else from Amazon. They have to take kids to school and stuff like that. So,
Are you ready to
what do you want to talk about?
relieve these people's anxiety about the chase? Question from
What are your thoughts on the second poem in Fenn's chest? Do you think this can lead to a new hunt, or do you think it's nothing, but it should all move on? So if you're talking about, and I only caught a little bit of this, you guys know I don't do a lot of that, but I did catch the Christy and Mike show, and it was last Monday, where they had a show, and Christy replayed an interview, part of an interview that she had done with Fenn, one of the last interviews that he did. And she asks him how, she was curious, like, how are we going to know when you die? How are we going to know that whoever claims they found the chest would be the person that actually found the chest? And Forrest said he thinks about it for a little bit in the way that he does. And he says, well, there is a way, but I'm not going to tell you. So that's the first thing. Anytime, so I can't be assured that at some time in his life, Forrest wasn't a spy or got spy training, but he uses a lot of tradecraft. Over the time that I've watched him and read about him and seen him, he uses a lot of what is called tradecraft, spy tricks. All right. So when somebody tells you, oh, there's a way, but I'm not going to tell you, that's their way of what's it called? Deflecting the question, because now you're not thinking about the question, you're thinking about the deflection. Why did he say that? So then that gives you the opportunity, when he says, I'm not going to give you an answer, that gives you the opportunity to start imagining all the possible answers. And that's why you say that. That's tradecraft, right? When you say, oh, yeah, I could tell you that.
But then I'd have to kill you.
But then I'd have to kill you. There is a way, but I'm not going to tell you. So now you don't even remember the question at that point. You're just worried about what was the deflection? What is it that he can't tell me about, right? And then that's the opportunity to start making up things. So that's the first thing, tradecraft. The second bit of tradecraft came when, and this is Forrest. This is not Dale. I think Dale was just kind of a part of it because he was close to Forrest, and Forrest knew that he could trust him. So she shared, and I'm probably not going to state these correctly, but Christy shared some of the emails that she exchanged with Dale, and she was kind of asking, what was that about, right? She's still worried about the deflection. What was he saying? Will we know? What was that? And Dale says, I'm not exactly sure the words, but Dale says something like, well, he said there would be a poem in the treasure chest. He told him that, right? He didn't tell him what the poem said, how many lines it was, what it was about. He just said, there's going to be a poem. There's a poem in the treasure chest. Tradecraft. Here's why. So if you I'm trying to think of a situation in which you could use that. So if you wanted to prove that someone was not on your side, let's say you're an American and you're uncertain whether or not this guy is on your side, you give that guy a false fact and see how it is reported. That's how you find out whether spies that are claiming they're coming over to you, you give them something false and then see what they report, right? If that ends up on your side picking it up. So it's all tradecraft. Here's what I am very, very comfortable believing. because that's why I don't have any more evidence than anybody else. If I was Forrest Fenn and I was going to tell you something like, if he had answered Christie's question, right, instead of saying, there is a way, but I'm not going to tell you, if he had answered, there is a way, I put another poem in the treasure chest, and that's all he says to you, right? And this is all dependent upon him being alive. So he says to Christie, the way you find out is ask the person if they found the poem in the treasure chest. Well, when Christie said that, I had an immediate memory of a story that Forrest used to tell all the time. And it was early I'd say in the first half of the chase, and it was some guy that called him on the phone, and he told Forrest that he had found the treasure and that it was I found warm waters and I found the treasure. And Forrest asked him, did it tarnish the treasure chest? And then Forrest used to laugh and say, he hung up that phone so fast that he was on his way to pick up that treasure, right? What Forrest was doing right there was proving to himself that that guy didn't have the treasure chest because the treasure wasn't in warm water, but that guy believed Forrest when he asked the question. Forrest didn't say the treasure was warm water. He said, did the warm water treasure tarnish the chest? So when it comes to this poem thing, that's kind of what he did. Didn't tell you what the poem was. He didn't even tell you that there was a poem. But then one day somebody would come and claim they had the treasure, and Dale would say, did you find the poem that Forrest left in it? And if the person said, yes, I did, you would know that wasn't the finder of the treasure because there is no second poem in the treasure chest. The second poem exists in our imagination. But the easiest way to prove that you have someone that found the treasure after Forrest asked them that question, they call, Jack calls, Forrest says, did you find the poem I left in the treasure chest? And Jack says, I did. That little 4-line poem. You'd think that if there was a poem in that treasure chest, Jack would have mentioned it in one of his emails, in the same one that he mentioned Skippy, Donna, and Creighton, right? But if any of us had asked him, did you find the poem? And he looked at us in kind of a stupid way and he said, what poem? Forrest up in heaven would know that's the guy that had the treasure. It's tradecraft. It's Forrest Fenn tradecraft. There is no poem in the treasure, and that's the point. It's funny because I always felt like the bracelet was not an intent. It was something that he came up with afterwards, right? That he thought, well, if I just say, did you find my bracelet? And the person said, yeah, you mean the turquoise bracelet? He told that story enough so that everybody knew that. But did anybody ever hear him in all the years that you listened to him? Did anybody ever hear him mention the poem in the treasure chest? And the reason was he didn't come up with that until somebody started asking, until he started thinking about the end of his life. And he would say things like, and it wasn't until end. I mean, he was close to within a year probably of his death when Christie answered him the question. Yeah, there is a way, but I'm not going to tell you. Why not? Why wouldn't you tell him? So I don't think there was a poem in the treasure chest, and I think Forrest knew that. And I'm going to have to guess that Dale knew it. Maybe if Christie exchanges some, because I don't think Dale answered the question, right? I don't think Dale answered about the poem, right? He didn't say whether Forrest told him that there would be a poem or there wouldn't be a poem. So I don't think there ever was a second poem in the treasure chest. I hope that did that answer the question.
Well, that's your opinion. I mean, your opinion of an answer for that question.
Yeah.
Not that I have one at all.
All of this stuff is opinion. Just like everybody, we're all at the opinion stage, right? We don't have any evidence of anything. If anybody has evidence that there was another poem in the treasure chest, I would be happy to consider it. I guess I'd have to, but the evidence is based on what we have, pictures and descriptions, the evidence is there was no poem in the treasure chest, no additional poem, other than maybe he wrote the poem into his autobiography. So I had some thoughts about the, as long as we're talking about Fenn, let's see. I took the pictures and I kind of merged them together, and because they were scans of scans, they don't go together exactly perfectly. They're right up here. So that was the first of the pictures. And I'm thinking these pictures were taken, I now put them in the order that they were taken: 1, 2, 3, and 4. This was the first one that he, well, it may not be the first one that he took. It was the first one that he took, that he shared, right? So there might have been pictures before this. I don't know. He might have taken one before he started uncovering it, right? He had to know at some point that he found the treasure chest. I think this is the point that he said to himself, oh, it is the treasure chest. Look at that. There's the top. Because you can see what he's done is brush the dirt. I'm kind of thinking that when he went up here, he didn't go prepared like an archaeologist. An archaeologist would have trowels, a little pointy trowels they use. They would have a variety of sizes of brushes because they don't want to damage any of the artifacts that they're looking for. He probably had his hands and maybe a small shovel of some kind. But at this point, you put your gloves on and you start brushing it downwards, and you can see where all that detritus is right there. So he brushed all of that off, right? It was under this. By the way, I think this is a lodgepole pine, because to me, that looks like a lodgepole. These two right here look like lodgepole pine cones. And if you look at the lodgepole pine, there's two areas in Wyoming. Part of it interjects into Yellowstone, but there's another area over the Bighorn River, along the mountains in the Bighorn River that are also lodgepole pine. So he brushes this off. And that's where he starts getting excited. This is the treasure chest that I'm looking for. We all know what it looks like. But you can see part of the treasure chest is buried underneath this fallen log. So I'm thinking that when Forrest dug the hole that he put this in, he didn't dig precisely a 10 by 10 hole, right? He dug a hole that started under the bottom of that log and underneath the log, and then dug it big enough so that he could put the treasure in and put the treasure chest in. And he didn't put it in all the way, because he still had to put he put it in there, covered it up with detritus, went back to his car, got the load of treasure, brought it back, pulled it out, pulled the treasure chest out, dumped the treasure into it, slid it back under the tree, and then started covering it, whether it was his hands or a shovel. I'm going to guess that his objective was to bury the treasure. So he took a shovel with him, maybe a small one, that military style folding shovel. But that hole has got to be at least 5 inches deep. You're not going to dig that with your hands. You're going to have a shovel with you. So that's what he did. He put it under there so that, you've heard me say this before. He said things like, you're never going to stumble over that. Nobody's ever going to stumble over that treasure. Well, when it's in the ground like that, of course, you're not going to stumble it. You'll be hard pressed just to see it, much less stumble over it. He also said that if you had somebody asked him, could you find it with a metal detector? He said, yeah, if you're standing right over it, which would have happened, that the metal in that box, whether it was the box itself or some of the items in the box, would have definitely set off a metal detector, but it wouldn't have done it from 3 feet away. The metal detectors work when you're actually right over the object, right? And I don't care how good the metal detector is. You've got to be, immediately over the object with a metal detector. That means you have to be within 2 or 3 feet of where the object is. So yeah, if you're standing right there, you're going to find it. So there were a couple of things. Oh, and then the last thing, of course, is he never answered the question whenever you asked, did you bury that treasure? He would correct them and say, I didn't say it was buried. I didn't say it was hidden, but I didn't say it was buried. So he always made that leave it up to us to what we're going to find. So the conclusion I came to after that is, and I went back and we actually did a stream on this. It might have been a video recording way back when. And the title of the stream was something like it. I didn't go back and look for it. I'm sorry. I said I did, but I didn't. The title of the stream was, "We're not looking for a treasure. We're looking for a blaze." And Shelley corrected me, right? She said, no, we were always looking for the treasure. If we were looking for a treasure, we wouldn't have found it, right? We wouldn't have found a treasure if we were looking for it. We would have found the treasure if we were looking for the blaze and we looked quickly down. Shelley also pointed out that technically we wouldn't have found the blaze had we not first found where warm waters halt. So, and she's very right. I think you do have to follow the clues, but in the end, you look at those two lines of the poem. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down, your quest to cease. So we were never looking for a treasure. We were looking for a blaze. And according to Jack, that blaze has been damaged in some way. Now, if it was yet just another fallen lodgepole pine, it wouldn't have the kind of longevity. Forrest said they're going to be looking for my treasure in 100 years. Well, if they would, and the blaze was a lodgepole pine, they would have, again, never found it, because 10 years out, you can look at that. You can see what 10 years out in the forest will do to any place. That place was different 10 years after Forrest hid that treasure, enough that he probably wouldn't have been able to find it without some help. He would have had to look for a while, because I've done that. I've done places where I've left something intentionally, and then I go back to find it. There's a not a pictograph, but a
Petroglyph
up above the Rio Grande in the BLM area above. Oh my goodness!
in Pilar.
In Pilar. And it's on the back of this large rock that happens to be on one side of the parking lot. And I always want to go back and make sure it's still there and I can get a picture of it. And every time I go back to look for it, I kind of forget what I'm looking for. And I've got 5 or 6 pictures of it. So that may also relate to my theory about Jack recovering the treasure rather than finding it. He would have had to have found the blaze in order to do that. Maybe that was the frustration of the 25 days that were out there. So, but this kind of, I feel like, it kind of confirms why he said the things that he did, why Forrest said the things that he did, and why he behaved the way that he did. So this is his second picture. You can see it looks like it's pressed against the log there. So Forrest didn't dig under the log all the way. He dug 5 inches down, and it might have been the end of the log, but it looks like the top is pressed against that, but it's obviously the chest. He's been brushing more material off, and he started to dig around outside of it. And the next one, in the next shot, he has got, and part of this was cut off, but that's his thumb. It's him holding up the chest, and it's still in the hole, it looks like to me, right? It's still in that hole that Forrest dug for it. It's not completely out. Nothing has been disturbed, and you can tell he can't get the top all the way up because it's hitting the back of the log, because it was not, like I said, it wasn't quite buried all the way under the log. The other thing to do, I think that's where the stick is, and I don't know why that stick is in there. And also, I want to say something about that stick. I made a really bad assumption about it last week. So this stick, that's the stick as it got pulled out from this corner here. And I thought, well, that looks like it's been carved. That's not carved. As I look closer at it, those are actually the edges of 2 coins, 2 of the gold coins that are in there. So I think a good botanist could probably make some sense of where this might be. I would still, and this is my opinion, I would still not be looking in Yellowstone National Park. I don't see any evidence that this was hidden in Yellowstone National Park anymore, that it was anyplace else in Wyoming. So, but it's interesting to look at and kind of coordinate it with some of the things that Forrest said to us. The things that he said about, I didn't say I buried it, but I didn't say I hid it.
Right. And he was talking about the difference between being buried or being entombed, or some of the other words that he used.
Yeah.
And it seemed more like, and the top was not buried, so that's not technically buried. It's just stuck in the dirt.
To me, it looked like it was buried in a hole that was approximately 11 by 11 by 6, so that you could put it in there comfortably, and then you could brush stuff back on it, right? So it wasn't completely, it wasn't physically buried and then covered up with 2 feet of dirt. it was physically buried and then covered up with the detritus around it. So Jens says, Toby, do you think the pictures are authentic? They don't match the description Jack, gave in his interview with Dan Barbarisi. So I think there's a couple of things. I would be surprised if Jack had seen the treasure much after his initial contact with Forrest and then it going into a vault someplace in some safe deposit box. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's kind of hard to describe. I mean, how do you describe it? It's a bunch of gold coin. I mean, take a look at one of those pictures, right? Let me go back there for just a sec. How, let's see, that's going to be the last one. Right, take a look at that. And that's how he saw it. That's how he left it, because you poked around a little bit, right? Take a look at that and tell me how you would describe that X number of months after you had put it in a safe deposit box. It has a bunch of gold coins. The bracelet was in a soggy package with, the key was rusted. There were some more gold coins. There were a couple of nuggets. He might have, I don't think Jack really got to inventory everything until he did clean it, he said, in the hotel room. But if he inventoried it, he didn't say so. He probably got to inventory it the day that he shared with Forrest at the attorney's office. So I don't know how anybody could look at something like this, step away from it for a month, and then describe it accurately. So that's the first thing. It may not match the description, but I would challenge you or anyone else to describe what was in your soccer bag when the last time you were playing soccer with a team in high school. And it wouldn't match. I can guarantee you it wouldn't match, right? I have a storage unit that has boxes. The containers are marked. And for the life of me, if you were to describe what's each in one of those containers, I would say, well, the one that's marked photographic equipment has photographic equipment. And here's a good point. I don't have them handy. Where are they? So one of them is marked audio equipment, and it included a package of 100 of these black ear muff protectors or head protectors, ear protectors. And I went to look for it in the storage unit. I couldn't find it. I eventually had to buy more. So human nature is probably, you wouldn't expect to be able to describe something as complex as this any more than you would be able to describe what I put in the box marked photographic equipment or videographic equipment or streaming equipment or audio equipment. That's hard to do. That's a second thing. And then when somebody asks me if these pictures are authentic, I would compare them to the few pictures that we had of the treasure chest while we were looking for it. And to me, it looks like the stuff that Forrest said he put in the treasure chest. Did he get it all right? No. A, he was an old man. B, he played with this damn treasure chest. I mean, the picture, one of our first pictures had pieces in that treasure chest, including watches that eventually Forrest didn't include because he knew they would just rust, knowing what it was like in the forest. So I don't think Forrest could have accurately described what was in that treasure chest. His memory was what he put in the book, and that was as of the last time he had opened that treasure chest. He didn't spend every day, 2 hours every day going in and, like a crazy person and playing with the treasure chest. He had his impressions of what were in there. He took out the $100,000 worth of cash. Not going to survive, right? So I don't think anyone can, as a basis for the claim that it's not authentic, base that upon someone's description, my description, Forrest's description, Jack's description of what it was. Secondly, as I look at these pictures, and I consider that that box is 10 years older than it was when Forrest hid it in the forest, that to me looks pretty authentic. I wouldn't be able, I don't think you could go to court and say that these pictures are authentic and expect that the court is going to say, I need to see the treasure chest. And then I need to see the treasure chest that it was. Authentic to me is, does it look pretty much like the way Forrest left it 10 years earlier? And I don't see how you can fake that kind of picture. There's just no way to fake that kind of picture. Nobody I know, and I know a lot of great Photoshop experts, nobody could fake that picture. So I think if you were to ask me, is it authentic? I would say authentic. Yeah, I would call it authentic. By the way, I probably Cynthia is my friend, but in my opinion, I think going up there and looking for the spot in which the treasure was hid after I'll use Fenn's number 350,000 of us looked for the treasure for 10 years and expecting you're going to find the hole where the treasure was hidden. I think you ought to just say I need to get back to Yellowstone because I love Yellowstone and I love the bison and I like my bike riding. Going back and saying I'm going to find the spot, I think is a heartbreaker. A heartbreaker. Oh, that's our Yellowstone. So Shelley and I do these virtual, what do they call them? Races.
They're hikes, challenges.
Yeah. And you have to finish them a certain number of miles in a certain amount of time that you commit to. And then you don't actually do Yellowstone. You do the same distance of the trail that they create. And what's really cool about it is they've taken they pictures of the area that you're actually going. You can actually follow along on a map, a Google map, to see where you are in the race. And then they send you postcards with pictures of the areas where the postcards pop. It's kind of neat. We've done 6 of them now? Or I've done 6. I got more.
Several, yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It keeps you active because you have to put miles in every day.
That's right.
All right. So, do you want to talk about anything else? I think we've beat that one to death, haven't we? Oh, we need to do a giveaway. We got 23. Do it quick.
Do what?
What happened? What did you hear? Finn hadn't buried his chest. He'd hidden it, and then Steve calls it nook or a depression, and even ground in the middle of a fire. I guess, Jens, you're going to have to go back and look. You have to look at the pictures, right? The pictures don't say to me, right? That picture there, say hidden. That to me looks buried. Now it only may be buried up to the top, but I'd far more call that buried than hidden. Hidden to me is he found a little nook in a set of rocks, or on a rock face, a rock wall, and hid it in the nook, and then maybe put another couple of rocks in front of it. That to me is hidden. This, I don't see how anybody could deny that's a buried treasure, right? It's brushed back, and unless the implication is that you believe that Jack, went through all the trouble of finding the treasure in the nook, the hidden treasure, and then going and buried it so he can make a story out of it. That doesn't, again, I don't know. Well, the other thing, MS, about here, that's the hard part. That treasure, so this was pulled out of that nook in June of 2020. We'll be April, May, June, 2 months away from that now. So it's almost 2 years that little hole in the ground has had an opportunity. And I'm going to bet, knowing Jack and how he feels about Forrest and the Finn, I'm willing to bet that Jack was from Zach. He says,
you got a super chat from John Miller.
Oh, super chat from John Miller for 1999 from Zach. He says, Jackbox 9 is coming out soon. We just bought Jackbox 8.
I know.
Did we just get Jackbox 8?
Yes.
Well, maybe one of these nights what we'll do is we'll have 1 hour's worth of headlines, and then we'll play games for an hour.
Yeah, there you go. See?
Tell Jack as soon as
I knew we'd talk you into it.
We don't even have to wait. We don't even have to wait till 9. We've already got.
That's right. Because I think 9's not coming out till summer or fall even. And they're just talking about it. But thank you for the super chat, sir.
So let me go back to MS, because I think MS, you're right, because I don't think there is a hole in the ground. Here's what I think. I think Jack, being the conscientious guy that he is, probably filled that hole back in with as much of the stuff that was around it. And then he swept the detritus that he pushed away back upon it. I don't think that hole is there. Plus, it's had 2 years to settle in, so it might have an indentation with a bunch of pine cones and other. I mean, look at that. That looks to me. Look at this area here, right? That's your normal forest floor right there. The forest floor here has been brushed off of that chest. What he did, and there's another one of those little lodgepole pine cones. So what he did is he took that chest out of there, filled it back in and filled it back up filled it back by brushing the forced floor back on it. So going and looking for a hole, I think, is going to be um, I don't want to say it's a waste of time. It's her time. She can do what she wants. She's a happy retired lady. So, but looking for a hole in the forest 2 years after that hole was filled in, I know from experience is not something that you can do. Let's see. So Jack is lying. I don't know. So I don't know what Jack said that would make him a liar. Jens, what did Jack say that would make him a liar?
It could just be that his description doesn't fit your
Yeah.
idea of what it
Yeah.
should. There's a lot of variance in the forest floor.
There were a lot of times where Forrest made it a point to try and not to lie. That's why he never said that it was buried or it was hidden. He always used to say, "I didn't say it was buried, and I didn't say it was hidden." You know, he always got around having to tell the lie. I don't think Forrest was a fan of lying. So I don't think if he did lie, it was just an extraordinary situation where he couldn't tell you anything else. I thought what Forrest was always very good at was deflection. I think he was a better deflector than he was a liar. Okay, we do have 23. You want to do a giveaway? Did you figure out?
Yeah, you betcha. You ready?
Yeah, hang on. Let me get screen back. Okay, so here's the deal. We're going to give away a copy of our book. And also, I was digging through my storage unit and I found all those coins that we were giving away during our treasure hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll send a coin with it as well. So you'll get one of our coins, maybe two. There was 2 different coins, right?
Yes, there was the Mariah coin and the AGK treasure coin. And it's pretty exciting because, when people give away this crypto coins, it's just an imaginary thing, but you get an actual solid, hold it in your hand, tactile coin when you win a coin from us.
So this is our latest book. I say it's almost 300 pages, but I'm going to do it accurately this time. It's 252 pages of everything. How many links are in here to downloads and things? 10? 6?
What's that?
How many links are in this book that they can pull down?
Oh, I don't know. Probably 5-ish.
So we sent off the other books that we gave you last week. I didn't get till Wednesday because I forgot we promised that we were going to sign them, and Shelley and I weren't together until Tuesday again. So, all right. So a copy of our book and at least one, the Mariah coin. What was the other one? What did the AGK have?
It had the treasure chest on one side. Had a treasure chest
logo on the other. Okay,
yeah.
So you'll get both coins because I have both of them. So you get 2 AGK coins, one with the treasure chest on the back, and one with the magnolia on the back.
Yes.
So we'll put that in with the book. Okay, so what you have to do, get ready to send a text message now. Send a text message to 505-750-2744. It's scrolling across the bottom right there, with the answer to Shelley and Shelley's trivia question. And I asked you to make a trivia question about something that if you've been watching us, you would know about us. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. 505-750-2744.
And here's the question.
And the first text message I get with a correct answer will win the book and the 2 coins. All right?
What is the name of the town Toby and Shelley drove through on Good Friday, 2017, on the way home from a boots on the ground, where they became a part of a lowrider parade?
And we did that every year for, I don't know, 3 years. All right. So let's see who can.
Name of the town. So we need a name of a town.
Right. Send a text message. There's the number, 505-750-2744. The first one to answer correctly will win a copy of the book and 2 AGK coins.
And while we're waiting for, and don't forget to leave your name with your text so we know who it is.
Well, because we have to ask you to send us your shipping address as well. So
yeah, but we want to know who won.
Yeah, it was convenient
the right
because 2 of the people that won last week were previous winners, so already had their address. So
yeah.
Wait, I know Kevin Kevin Carney. No, you can't, Kevin Carney.
Kevin, we already have a book. So I know.
Carney's nice to see you.
What is the name of the town Toby and Shelley drove through on Good Friday 2017 on the way home from a boots on the ground where they became a part of a lowrider parade?
Oh, guess who won? Our first, so we did get an answer, and it was from Las Cruces. Nope, that wasn't right. The right answer is, there's a Pagosa Springs. So you know a lot about us, though. The correct answer is Espanola, and there is even a tilde over the N. I'm impressed. And
Wow.
that is from Jens and
Oh,
Masuda Esser.
wow. Very good.
So Jens and Masuda, let's see, Ranchitos Park. No, you got it right. We got a Pagosa Springs. You were right with Espanola. Jens, you got it. You and Masuda got it. So we will send you a book and a couple of our coins. Let's see. What other we got there? Yeah.
Very good, guys. Good
So
job.
Jens, send me a text message with your shipping address. So I will put that. Shelley and I will be together on Wednesday. We'll sign the book and get it off to you. Somebody tried for Pecos. That was we did go. We went through all these places that you're mentioning: Ranchitos, Pecos, Pagosa Springs, Las Cruces. Yep, we have been to all of those places together. But the one that we go through every year, the reason we'd end up is because they had a Good Friday scheduled Good Friday lowrider parade.
Yeah.
On Good Friday
We go up in the morning and we see all the penitentes, and then on the way home we did the lowrider parade.
I didn't know that they had canceled the penitentes for the last 2 years.
Oh yeah.
This was the first year they because of the pandemic they re-allowed it. So we got they did do that. There we go.
That was fun.
Yeah, Jens, send me your. There it is. I've got his address. All right.
All right.
All right.
Did you want to get into the whole propaganda issue?
Yeah, I do want to talk about that. Let me make
that was a question we got earlier this evening.
Yeah. So
how do you stop propaganda?
Let me. Well, you can't stop propaganda. You just have to know the difference. Let me make a quick slide.
It out with correct information.
Right.
Yeah.
Hang on.
That's all you can do is try to drown it out.
So hold on. I need a new. What shall I do this with? Google slide. All right. Let me just make a quick Google slide. You talk to people while I'm doing this.
Oh, okay. What are we going to talk about? Anybody have any questions that I can answer? Go ahead and put them in the chat room now. And
okay.
Hope we're having a great Easter this year. We're having some beautiful weather. Kevin and I got out and pulled some weeds in the front yard today. Woohoo!
Spring in New Mexico.
Yeah. Getting at those weeds, it's been difficult. We've had so much windy weather and cold weather, and it was finally warm and nice today. You thought it was osier.
Oh, we did. Oh, when we used to go to Rio de los Pinos, we always had to go. That it wasn't actually a town; it was a train stop.
Oh yeah, osier. Yeah. Do you want to make more treasure hunts? No. We had fun doing the one that we did, and then that was enough. We were good with that. We're like, one was enough, and let's do other things now. So we're happy doing what we're doing.
Misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, yellow journalism. You had one more that you reminded me of.
I brought up yellow journalism. Conspiracies.
Oh, conspiracies. Right. Well, I guess we could talk about it. Look.
Yeah, we're pretty happy with what we're doing. We like writing our books and talking about digital marketing and collaborating with other digital marketers and just having a good time. Maybe we'll go to a few more conferences in the next couple of years and write a couple more books.
Yeah, and if you so the last conference we went to, we actually met some people there. We met a lot of people at the conference, but we went and visited some people who were in the area. So if we let you know we're going to a conference sometime and you live in the area where the conference is, let us know. We'll get together. We always like visit. We like visiting. We like visiting. So we had this question earlier in the night, and so I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time studying these things, and so I not only kind of know what they are, but know how they happen and when they happen and who's doing it, because it's pretty easy to identify once you're doing it. But again, what all of these count upon, and you see that I've left information out there, information based on facts that can be supported, right? It is fact. It's information, regardless of how it's configured, but it's based on fact, and you can easily access the supporting facts. So I didn't want to talk about that. We can if you want. So there are at least 4 or 5 things that are different from information based on facts. The first is misinformation, and misinformation is different from information in that it is based it is information that is a misinterpretation of the facts. So I could tell you today misinformation. I showed you a picture of a car. I called it a 1963 Studebaker Avanti. Those are the facts. It was a 1963 Studebaker Avanti, as supported by the gentleman who had owned the car since he bought it new, right? So those are the facts. What I could have said is misinformation is I found this car that looks a lot like a 1963 Studebaker Avanti, but I figured out it was home built recently in a garage down the street. So it uses the facts as a way to provide you information kind of based on the facts, but they aren't real. They aren't, and that's what happens in most news. And I'm not pointing at right news that goes from the comes from the right, or news that comes from the left. They both do it. They take the facts and they interpret the facts in a way that's comfortable for whatever their position is. And that's why right now you're having people that are saying they take the facts. There is a war in Ukraine. Russia is having difficulty with it, but depending on whose side you are on, Russia and you know, it doesn't quite make the rank of propaganda yet, but it is taking the facts and treating it, not changing the facts, but changing the way that the facts are interpreted. Disinformation is different in that it isn't based on fact. It is presenting you information that is trying to change your mind about something without interpreting the facts in a way that would probably prove what you're saying incorrect. So a good example of that would be Jack found a treasure. He found the treasure in Wyoming. And he tells us that I found a treasure and it was in Montana, right? That's that lie. We don't know, but I'm using it as an example. That is disinformation intended to not only deceive you, but to get you to act in a different way. So you start looking for the hole. You know, it's like so that Cynthia would start looking for the hole in Montana instead of Wyoming. We have to assume that it's true. We don't know for certain because there's been no validation of any of these things, and that's what makes misinformation and disinformation so easy. Misinformation is harder because you can always look up the facts to correct it, and that's what's important. If there is something that is said and you think to yourself, well, that's not right, I didn't hear that right. Toby said that the Russian ship was shot with 2 Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles and it sunk. But if you hear from somebody saying, that didn't sink, it was damaged, but they made it all the way to port, that's misinformation. If they say not only it was never shot the Russians wanted to move it away from where it was in danger, and it claimed that it was shot. That's disinformation. And there's a kind of narrow one. One is not necessarily with intent. It's a way to present the facts in so it matches your thinking,
So,
right?
which one of those is alternative facts?
Alternative facts is a class of its own. I mean, there is no such thing as alternative facts, right? There are the facts. There is reality, because you also hear not only alternative facts is a variation of alternate reality, right? Uh, there's another saying that people use. Reality is perception. Perception is reality. No, no, reality is reality. There is only one reality. How you perceive it is how you perceive it. It is not reality. So when people say to me, "Oh, perception is reality," bullshit. Reality and then perception falls into one of these categories that you see on the screen, depending on what the objective is, right? So don't ever let anybody get away with perception is reality. No, no, no. Reality is reality. Facts are facts. Opinion, perception, interpretation are all of those things based on the reality. And where you want to get is to the reality, right? There is no alternative facts. The facts are the facts. The reality is the reality. There is no the perception of reality is not valid, because I can guarantee you, and this happens a lot in crime events, where there'll be 10 people, all of who see the same crime, and when they're interviewed by the police, each one describes it differently, including the perpetrators of the crime. And that's their perception of the reality. Now, eventually, the police or whomever will investigate that crime, or they're taking the evidence that supports whatever actually happened. That's reality. You're standing around watching it happen based on the amount of adrenaline that's going through your system. How close you were to it, and whether or not you were part of it, is going to change your perception of that reality. Your perception is not reality. Propaganda is misinformation repeated loud enough and often enough so that you start believing it is reality. And that's what the Nazis were masters at. Goebbels, who was his chief of propaganda, was a master at convincing the German people that A, this war was in their best interest, B, that it would result in great wealth for every one of them, and C, they were constantly winning, even when they were losing. Even when the Russians and the Western powers were outside of Berlin, there was still propaganda saying this is short-lived, and we're going to beat them all back, and we're going to win this war, and we're going to take over the world, right? If you say that loud enough, and what I mean by loud, I don't mean but yelling at the top of your lungs. I mean using every one of the possible channels, whether it's the internet or television or radio or Sirius XM or broadcasts. If you say it often enough and you say it loud enough, eventually, just by human nature, it becomes reality. And that's why you always have to check these things, right? It happens a lot in America. When an American politician says something to me, I go check it. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably a variation of one of these things. And the only way you can correct that is by doing, I hate using this term because it's become such a bastardized presentation of it. You have to do your own research into the subject from credible places. And it is primarily journalists that are getting this first-person view of what is happening in the Ukraine right now. If I talk to one of my friends in Moscow, and I talk to a journalist that I know is in the Ukraine right now, I am far more likely to believe that journalist in the Ukraine than I am my friend in Moscow, because my friend in Moscow is getting a lot of propaganda. Now, the friends that I have in Moscow are probably wiser than that. They were very aware of what it was like to live in Russia, and they were willing to accept that. But the thing that interests me is that there are people leaving Russia at the rate of 200,000 a day now. And that's an indication to me that those are the people that don't believe the propaganda, that they want to get out of there before the getting out is too late. The getting out. What is it? Before there's a saying, "Getting out while the getting is good."
Yep.
Yeah, because one day those borders are going to close and they're going to lose anymore. And these aren't average people. These are their educators and their politicians and people with the moneyed people. They're finding ways to leave Russia. That's not healthy, because they're not believing the propaganda. So another variation of journalism is, Shelley mentioned, yellow journalism. And yellow journalism is when the story is told not to express the story, but to sensationalize the story in order to sell more newspapers or the equivalent thereof. So the intent is not in the person producing the news. It is in the people that are taking that news and reporting it, and they sensationalize it in order to get more views, basically.
And
And
sometimes they create news out
right,
of nothing.
right.
Or they'll pull stuff that's a bunch of conspiracy theories, they'll whitewash it and put it out as news, and it's not news. It's oh well, people are saying, and I've heard people, saying this, and that's not news. That's just a bunch of hearsay.
Um, so Larry brings up a good point, right? Okay, Larry says propaganda from both sides between Ukraine and Russia. Both sides are victims. I pray for the common folk on both sides. I agree. Now, yeah, um, there are victims on. I don't want to say there are good people on both sides. We made that mistake once. Russia invaded Ukraine. It stated in advance why it was invading Ukraine. Ukraine, interestingly enough, is in Afghanistan. They know how to fight back. Both Russia and the United States lost in Afghanistan simply because the Taliban outlasted them, is the best way you can describe it. Ukraine wasn't going to stand still to have an invading power. And fortunately, you have to be, if you're one of the countries in Western Europe, whether you're Germany or France or Spain, any of the other NATO members, you have to wonder if you're next. Where does he stop? And I am reminded of Hitler moving eastward from Germany into Czechoslovakia and Poland. And every time the Western powers would say, it's okay, he just wants that because he can make this claim that there are German people there, and he won't go any further than that. Well, eventually Hitler's armies ended up on the Volga, outside of Stalingrad, actually inside of Stalingrad. And the whole time we're going, he won't go any further. The Western European countries right now are saying to themselves, where does he stop? If he's the people in Moldova, which was once part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and don't have anywhere near the population or the military capacity that Ukraine does, they're starting to worry. They're starting to feel like, rats, I'm next. And there's a very good chance that they are next, because it would be, in the case of Moldova, a very easy, Hungarian or Poland or Polish or Czechoslovakian takeover. They could do that with Moldova. So those Western European countries are probably saying to themselves right now, is Ukraine all he wants? Because Putin will take as much as he can get. And unfortunately, both we overestimated his capability. Both we and he overestimated his capability. He thought his military was a lot better than what his military has indicated, and we thought it was a lot better. And I think the fact that he didn't get all the way to Kyiv and had to pull back to the western or the eastern part of Ukraine was as much a surprise to Putin as it was to us. Which tells you a lot about his military. That means his military was lying their asses off about what their capacity and capability was. So,
Conspiracies?
So Sparky Spark says, I don't know, Toby Shelley, how many books? He started with 1,000, right?
Oh,
He
copies
published,
of the one book, yes.
yeah, he started with 1,000 copies of the one book. They were all supposed to be sold out of the
Collected works.
Collected Works bookstore in Santa Fe, and the expectation is that we were going to sell them to his friends. And then along came Margie Goldsmith and her article in the United magazine Hemispheres, and it went viral. I mean, not in a network. I mean, yeah, in a networking way, but not in an internet way. That magazine is on the back of every United Airlines aircraft, the seat back of every United, and it went viral. And that's when that was the first big blow up. And I think there were two things that Forrest didn't plan upon. Number one, I'm sure that when he when Margie, who is a really humble, tiny, unimposing person as she interviewed him, I'm willing to bet he never imagined that when she said, "Oh, it's going to be published in an airlines magazine." I don't think he ever imagined what would happen to the chase after that. And then once they got a hold of it, it just spread, went to the internet, and it went crazy. And I don't think Forrest ever imagined the potential of his treasure hunt going viral. I think it surprised him. Now, I think he's a good enough of a marketeer to be able to respond to that, to react to that, and do other things. I mean, eventually published, what was it, 40,000 plus copies of the book, plus, it was all being discussed. I remember towards the end, or within the last 2 years or so, he told one of the journalists that was interviewing him that there were 350,000 people looking for the treasure. And when he asked him, "How did you know that?" and he said, "Oh, I know it from the number of emails and things like that I get." Anyway, let me get back to this propaganda point. The point is of all of this that you have to protect yourself. Don't expect the journalists and the opinion makers and the Twitter influencers to do it for you. You have to be good enough to get to the facts yourself and then form your own opinions based on the facts and informed by all the other information that you're getting. And that's how you have the confidence to start having debates about it. One of the things about doing this is you can have a debate because you're confident that you're aware of the facts, not the sources, not the opinions, not the influencers, because you may want to interpret that. And Shelley told you the day I watch MSNBC way over on the left, and then I watch Fox News way over on the right. And then CNN has migrated more towards the middle. So I watch them. So I look at them. I read at least the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times. And again, they're on different sides of the spectrum. But I want to make sure that I have a really good basis for making an opinion. I want to be comfortable with that opinion and know that the opinion is based on fact and it's been influenced by both sides of the discussion. So I was going to show you this. I had another slide for you. It's actually, I'll post this. So if you ever get a chance, you're finding out, or you're trying to find out who you listen to and how they're influenced. This is called the media bias chart. And it looks like this, and it ranks news sources. Oops, let me cover this up. It ranks news sources by, can I make that any bigger? Hang on just a second. It ranks news sources across the x-axis by how extreme they are. Most extreme over to the right, skews left, middle skews right, hyperpartisan right, most extreme. And then on the y-axis, the kind of publication it is. So down here it contains inaccurate, fabricated info, and then up here is fact reporting. So if you read AP, Reuters, PBS, you're going to get some facts, and then it falls off down below that. So one of my favorites, Rachel Maddow, is skews left and analysis or variations, high variation and reliability. So she's in between, but it ranks them all, and you get a sense of what you're listening to produces. They also have a feature. Let me go back so you can see that. They also have a feature that has an interactive media bias chart. And so it's got 1,662 sources. You can get in. You do have to pay for it. I do pay for it. And then you can take one of the publications that you listen to and or read, and you can put it into the media bias chart, and it tells you where it fits based on their sources, and then you can compare it to others that you're listening to. So, but if you want, did I put that in there? Let me put that in there. So if you're interested in finding out more about the places you look to, I put that into the chat room, so you guys can look at it. Add Fontes Media at fontesmedia.com. So, but it's a good way to get, a balance of what you're doing. So you can look at, something in here. This is kind of where I probably spend most of my time. And then I go up here to get a reporting of the facts, because those journalists basically report the facts with very little opinion.
Got a comment from JK Pioneer. He wants to know about how inflation was caused.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Inflation is caused, the basis for inflation is supply and demand and greed. It's always, you can always tie it to greed. Now, you can go back. There are people who will say, well, part of the inflation was caused by the fact that our buying habits were different during the pandemic. Well, part of that's true, right? You have to, inflation is always influenced by behavior. But the two biggest influencers of supply and demand are supply and demand, and how greedy, especially in America, the corporations want to be, right? You can go to the business reports, the annual reports for any major corporation in the United States, and you can see what they've made last year. And there were no unprofitable companies last year. No, none of the big ones. They all had record-setting profits. They made a lot of money, and they made a lot of money by using the supply chain problems that we were experiencing, supply and demand, and they're greedy. Corporations are by nature greedy. They want to make as much money as they can while they can. So part of it was trying to get us to believe that the real reasons for inflation are things like the pandemic. No, the pandemic certainly influenced our behavior, and so that had an effect on pricing. Putin and how he's using oil, or whether he's providing oil, or how he's behaving in the war, that had an influence. The real basic reasons for inflation are the ratio of supply and demand and how greedy corporations want to be. It's real simple. And if you want to see why we're inflating, you can look at any annual report from any major corporation last year, and they had a growth not only in revenue, but especially in profits. And profits is the difference between what it costs them to operate the business and what they make over and above that. There were no unprofitable corporations in the US last year, right? There were small companies that had experience. All the major, I'm going to say the top 400 corporations were profitable last year by significant amounts. They leveraged supply and demand, and they leveraged us being scared a little bit. There's not going to be enough toilet paper. Used to go to Walmart and watch the people carrying with multiple baskets full of toilet paper. Right? So it was the pandemic that fault of, No, corporations were at fault. And then the price of toilet paper went up because the supply fell short of the expectation that we were going to buy toilet paper by the truckload, for God's sakes. I seriously remember one time I was watching a family driving a pickup, filling the back of the pickup with toilet paper and paper towels. And I'm sure they'll have toilet paper and paper towels for the next 10 years, I'm sure. Because I don't know how often you guys use toilet paper, but I've never felt like there was going to be a shortage of toilet paper. So that's kind of where it comes from. There are influencers, and there are fingers to be pointed. But the real basis for most inflation is our perception of value. Our perception of value is based on the reality of supply and your perception, our perception of the need for us to buy it, the demand. So if a corporation can convince you that they're not making as many cows this coming year and raise the price of meat as a result, and you want that meat and you will pay whatever it is, that's inflation. That you help inflate the price. So
Well, at least
supply.
they're getting a real thing, whereas compared to an NFT, which you know some people think are worth millions of dollars and they pay that much expecting the price to go up when it's just a non-thing. It's just a bit of code.
So I share a piece of information that my financial manager of 30 years shared with me when I called him and asked him about um, cryptocurrency and NFTs. He didn't even answer the question. He just started laughing.
Yeah.
And I said, "What was that about?" And he said, "Toby, I thought you knew better."
But it's on the blockchain, man.
On the block. And worse, no matter how curious I am, I still don't know enough about either to make a credible investment, which is why I have a financial manager. So,
All right. Well, I think that's our 2 hours.
wow, we are good at using up hours, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Does he say, okay, Larry says, I don't have a dog in that fight. I don't discuss politics with search friends. We're all products of where we live. Yeah. So it's not. So when you talk about inflation, that's not politics. That's economy. And part of economy is an inflation. And inflation, if you take any economics course in chapter 1, they're going to talk about inflation being a byproduct of 2 things: supply and demand and greed. And the greed could be you and me, or it could be a large corporation. That's where inflation comes from. Okay, so we did have our good friends. Like, isn't it good that when our friends win our prizes, our good friends?
That's right.
Jens
And we have a room full of friends tonight. We
Yeah,
appreciate all of you being here tonight. And we'll be back again next week with more headlines. And look for our newsletter to come out on Tuesday. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, you can do that at news.agkmedia.studio. Get signed up, and then you'll be aware of all the shows that are coming up, what they're about, and when they're happening. I guess yesterday, we did a show on our Amazon Live where we promoted the Vaunt lighting essentials that we showed. Vaunt was a company that contacted us and asked us to do that. So,
you know what? We could
that was
probably.
fun.
Do you think we could give some of those things away? I mean, they belong to us, right? Bond gave them to us.
Yeah,
I still
they're
have.
ours.
So we have these. It's not in the stake, but we have these outdoor lights.
Maybe I wanted that.
Okay, you can have that. What about we have the lampy lamp?
I thought you were using that in your
Well, we can give
storage
away one of
facility.
them. I was going to keep going. So
Oh,
they gave
okay.
us all these things to do on our show. So this is their they call it the LED lantern, and it has a lantern thing, and it has let's see if I can do this without blinding you guys. It has a flashlight, really bright flashlight, and it has an emergency light that you put out by your car, and then it even has let me see if I can get to it. That's going to be my question next week. What's that Morse code for? Anyway, things to cover our show. So what I want to do, hang on. If you guys want to see our Amazon store, go to store.videotarot.com. Did I spell it right? So if you go to store, you will get this. And this is where we have all our products organized by what they call wish lists. But we actually owned these products. We've used them, and if you buy them from our store, we actually get a little commission, and it doesn't cost you extra. Amazon pays the commission, but we have every week we have a show on Amazon Live. We became an Amazon influencers. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And we get to have shows about it. So here's the last one. You can watch the last show.
For those of you who have our book, there's a chapter in there about how to do that.
How to do that, yeah, on how to become an Amazon influencer.
That's right.
So you can buy our books. You can buy all kinds of good things. You can buy my Pasoli seasoning.
It's not your Pasoli seasoning. It's the one you recommend.
There's one. There's a kit called where is it? Toby's Favorites. Where's Toby's Favorites? Toby's Favorites right there. So that's all the stuff that's my favorite stuff. There's my watch. Right? So anyway,
right.
store.videotarot.com. Try it out. It's a fun place.
There you go. All right. Well, I think that's it for tonight.
And take down the banner here. Looks like something from the 1926 Ford. Are you talking about my watch from the 1926 Ford? All right.
Happy Easter tomorrow, everybody.
Did you take the bunnies down?
I just took them off because I thought we were done.
Yeah, we are done.
Take down the decorations. Time to go home.
All right, Shelley Carney, I will see you tomorrow. Bring over those phones that I promised you so that you can see if Jared likes them. And otherwise, we'll see you guys. If you do show up on our shows, we do have messages and methods where we talk about digital marketing at 1 p.m. on Thursdays. And then 1 p.m. on Wednesdays. Shelley does her show, Women Conquer Business, at 11 a.m. on Thursdays. And then we do our Amazon Live, but it does play on YouTube. We do that at 1 p.m. on Thursdays, so you can see what we're hustling for Amazon. So that's a lot of fun for us.
And we'll be back again next Saturday.
We will be. Thanks for watching us. And join us next week. We'll have some more giveaways for you. All right?
Maybe we'll have a game. Who knows?
Next week? Is Jackbox 9, did the Millers say Jackbox 9 is out or coming?
No, coming.
Well, we can play 8. There was a couple of games on 8 we liked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we have all the Jackboxes from 1 through 8 at this point, so we can.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Thanks for sticking with us tonight. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Headlines, a Messages and Methods livecast hosted by Shelley Carney and Toby Younis. Please subscribe and leave a comment or question, and we'll consider your ideas for future shows. Share this show with your family and friends and invite them to become a member of our community. Check the show notes for links and resources, and please come back again next week.